Welcome into NFL Daily. Good morning, and as promised on Boxing Day, we break down the NFL playoff picture with some teams' playoff chances very much in the trash on the day after Christmas. Let's break down the overall NFC and AFC playoff picture, then we'll go more in depth on these. The Niners, Eagles, and Lions are all tied at 11-4. The Cowboys a game back there. The number one seed hopes still technically alive for all of those teams right now. The Niners have the tiebreakers, though, over Philadelphia and Detroit, and their schedule settles in a little bit easier. Tampa, the Rams, and Seattle can all clinch this week. Now, there are some scenarios that mean they can't quite all clinch together, but it is possible that we are just one spot open for the final week in the NFL regular season for the NFC. The AFC, meanwhile, 2 teams have clinched a spot. 0 divisions have been clinched. How about that with 2 weeks to go here? Ravens, Dolphins, a massive game this weekend. We'll spend some more time on that. Chiefs lost to the Raiders. The Jags are just falling apart. The AFC South is suddenly wide open. The Browns and Bills are 2 of the hotter teams in football right now, despite the Bills firing their OC, Cleveland down to like quarterback 4, and Joe Flacco's elite once again. It's all crazy. We will keep you guys covered with the NFL playoff pictures, the updates, etc., right here on the channel. Sub so you do not miss out on any of our NFL playoff news and updates. Hit that sub button for free right now. Let's go in depth here on the NFC playoff picture. We begin with the San Francisco 49ers, a rather ugly loss on Monday Night Football to the Baltimore Ravens that prevented them from securing some potential higher seeding clinches here. At minimum, they are going to be the 3 seed. They've already clinched the NFC West. They will finish ahead of Tampa no matter what. They clinched the number 2 seed with a win over the Commanders, and one of the following: the Lions lose to the Cowboys, or the Eagles lose to the Cardinals. They then, of course, clinch the number 1 seed if all of those things happen. Detroit loses to Dallas, and the Eagles lose to the Cardinals. So the Niners still in pole position for that number 1 seed. Philadelphia survived, as that was kind of I thought that game was over at halftime. Giants came charging back. They hold on against New York. They have the Cardinals in Week 17, the Giants in Week 18. They have clinched a playoff spot. Now, they can clinch the NFC East with a win and a Cowboys loss, which is very possible because the Cowboys are kind of reeling a bit as well, and they face a good team, although admittedly at home where Dallas is better. The Detroit Lions in Week 17. That is a Saturday night football game, which is going to be awesome. The Lions have clinched the NFC North. They then have the Cowboys and the Vikings. They're just fighting for seeding at this stage. Who do you think is the best team in the NFC? I still think it's San Francisco, despite the disastrous 4-turnover game from Brock Purdy plus 1 from Sam Darnold, with Purdy now battling a stinger injury. Who do you think it is? I said when the game, the Ravens and Niners, the 2 teams that don't have, or at least have the least amount, I should say, of fraudulent tendencies in the NFL. Niners kind of showed some more against Baltimore. Sound off with the pinned comment of today's video. Let's go to Tampa. The Bucs are getting hot at the right time, and that is oh so valuable. They blew out the Jags. They then play the Saints this week, Week 17. A win in that football game will clinch the NFC South for Tampa Bay. So Tampa very much in the pole position. Even if they beat the Panthers in Week 18, they're in fantastic shape there. The rest of the NFC playoff picture then focuses in more on the wild card race. Now, Dallas is still alive in the playoff hunt for the NFC East. At minimum, they have already clinched the number 5 seed, which would then be going on the road in theory against Tampa, and we've seen that story play out before. What Dallas needs to win the division, they have to win out and get 1 Eagles loss, which you might feel better about if they weren't playing 2 of the worst teams in football to wrap up the regular season. Now, today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. Head over to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. It's daily fantasy made easy, simple, and I would say more fun as well. You pick 2 to 6 player stat projections, more than, less than. See if you get them all right. Come out on top. You can mix and match sports as well. Of course, the 12 days of Picksmas promos are over, but I have hit 9 of my last 12 picks on Prize because I love the flex play. I got to get 2 out of 3 right. I would have been doing math here. I'd be like 2 of 12 if I did the power play. Flex play is the way to go, guys. Trust me. Here are my picks this week. Dak Prescott more than passing yards against the Lions defense, allowed 400-plus yards to Nick Mullins. Love that. Cooper Kupp more than receiving yards against a Giants team that's just not that great in coverage. Jonathan Taylor less than rushing yards against a Raiders defense that has played quite well as of late. Also, my fantasy opponent has Taylor, so I'm going to just kind of double down on that front. Again, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Links in the comments and the description of today's show. All right, the Rams getting hot again at the right time. They've had a couple big wins in a row to kind of salvage that season. They clinched the number 6 seed, or a playoff spot, with a win and a Seahawks loss. So the magic number then is down to 2 for the LA Rams, knowing that there's some 7 and 8 teams, depending on how things all turn out. They could be, numbers down to 1.5 maybe, I suppose. But win against the Giants, which they should do, sets them up for great success. 9 wins will at least get you into a tiebreaker scenario in the NFC. 10 wins get you in no matter what at this stage. Seattle, meanwhile, they play the Steelers. I hate that we're doing it, but we have to do it, folks. The Seahawks would clinch a playoff spot with a win and a tie. You guys know how I feel about ties. I despise them with a passion. I think they are profoundly un-American. I do not like that they exist. That is, however, the only scenario that exists with a tie. I will also make note the exact same thing is true for the Rams. A win and a tie also gets them in. So there is a scenario if the Packers and Vikings tie, because it takes out both of them basically from the playoff hunt, that the entire NFC playoff picture, at least the teams, would be known. But it does require a Packers-Vikings tie, and I hate it. All right, to the other teams that are still in the hunt. The playoff chances here are dwindling for both these teams. Now, what happens on Sunday Night Football, the Vikings and Packers play each other. The loser of that game, go home. Your playoff chances are done at that stage. It does not benefit you at all. There are scenarios in which, the Rams lose and the Seahawks lose and the Packers and Vikings are still alive, but that is a de facto playoff elimination game. And we might know if it is or not, by the way, officially on Sunday Night Football before right around the time the New Year's Eve ball drops. Here are the playoff odds here. Vikings, 27%. That's lower than Green Bay because Minnesota has to play the Lions in Week 18 as well still. Falcons and Saints, both at 12%. They are teetering on the brink. The Bears have a 1% chance. Now, the winner of that Packers-Vikings game sees their odds go up fairly significantly. But that's going to be a tough game to close out for both sides. They'll be alive entering Week 18, but still needing help. What is the better conference this year? A for the AFC, N for the NFC. Go vote as we get set to break down the AFC playoff picture. It's kind of wild. We've got 2 games left. That's it. And none of these teams actually clinched their division because the number 1 and number 2 seeds are the number 5 and number 6 seeds in the same conference, right? The Ravens, a very impressive win over the 49ers. I think they've laid their claim to best team in football, although they have another tough game. How about this? Week 17, Ravens-Dolphins. What a fantastic matchup that is. I'll make note, the Ravens clinched the number 1 seed with a win. That, of course, would also clinch them the AFC North. In the event that they lose, a Browns loss would also clinch the AFC North for Baltimore. But they need to close out. Steelers in Week 18, when they might be playing for anything, should at least do it by then. Number 2 seed, the Dolphins. Now, they have clinched a playoff spot at this stage. There are other clinching scenarios here for the Dolphins. Much like Baltimore, they would clinch at least the number 2 seed if they beat the Ravens. That would give them head-to-head tiebreaker, but they would still be tied, so they'd have to win in Week 18 to clinch that number 1 seed. They clinched the AFC East with a Bills loss, because, of course, they also clinched the division if they would beat the Ravens, blah, blah, blah. They would also secure at least the number 2 seed if the Bills lose and the struggling Chiefs lose. So in what is by far the game of the week, and it's in a 1 p.m. slot too, by the way, which is very unusual. Who you got? R for the Ravens, D for the Dolphins. Sound off for me in the comment section right now. The Chiefs in that offense, they don't look very good. Certainly seems like at some point Patrick Mahomes will have to go play a road playoff game for the first time in his career. They lose to the Raiders. They have a Week 17 matchup against the Bengals, then the Chargers. The playoff odds are still greater than 99%. They need to lose out and have a lot of help go against them, by the way. Here are their clinching scenarios. They secure at least the number 3 seed with a win. That simple, at home against the Bengals, who just lost to Pittsburgh. More on them in a little bit. At least the 4 seed, i.e. the division, with a Broncos loss and a Raiders loss. They should be a playoff team. It would be a colossal collapse by Kansas City. Speaking of kind of suddenly colossal collapses, the Jacksonville Jaguars are not heading in a good direction here. They have lost 4 straight games, 5 of their last 7, yes. And now Trevor Lawrence is again banged up. The good news is they play bad football teams. Carolina and Tennessee win out and they clinch the South, or win versus Carolina. The Colts lose to the Raiders, possible, and Houston loses to Tennessee. Tennessee's been close in several games here, but Jacksonville's 4 straight losses against fringe or actual playoff teams does not bode well for them into their playoff stretch. Let's go to the wild card race here. 2 teams will focus in on a bit more in-depth and then do kind of some more overarching views here. The Cleveland Browns, who are finding ways to win games despite all kinds of problems they have had this year. It's very impressive, frankly. They take care of business against Houston. They can clinch the number 5 seed with a win over the Jets. Now, in addition to this, there are clinching scenarios for Cleveland if they do not win. Here's how it happens. They get a playoff spot, the 7 seed, with the Bills lose to the Patriots, or the Jags lose to the Panthers, the Colts lose to the Raiders, and the Texans lose to Tennessee. So one of those first 2 and the bottom 2. Complicated, I know. We're not done yet. They clinch the 6th seed with the Steelers losing to the Seahawks, or the Bills lose to the Patriots, and the Jags lose to Carolina, right? Or the Bills lose to the Patriots, the Colts lose to the Raiders, and the Texans lose to the Titans. Is that complicated? Yes, it is. We're not done yet. They clinch the 5 seed if the Bills lose to the Patriots and the Steelers lose to Seattle and the Jags lose to Carolina, or Indy loses to Vegas. So first 2 got to happen, one of the bottom 2. I know. It's weird. Just beat the Jets. They should. They should blow them out of the water. It's a Thursday night game, by the way, with a Jets shaky quarterback room. They should blow them out. That should be a 20-3 win. Take care of business, lock up the 5 seed, play for nothing potentially in week 18. Let's go to perhaps one of the hottest teams in football, the Buffalo Bills. They held on. You blow out the Cowboys and you squeak by the Chargers. Football's a weird sport sometimes. Now it's the Patriots and the Dolphins. Now, there are multiple playoff clinching scenarios here for Buffalo, and the simplest ones are the following. We've got in total 5 scenarios. And I didn't even bother going into the some of the more complicated ones that just there's a lot going on. I'm not gonna do it. There's like 9 scenarios, something to get the 6th seed. Not gonna. We'll focus on this playoff spot for now for the Bills. All of them, of course, beat the Patriots. First step. If they beat the Patriots, the Bengals lose to the Chiefs, and the Jags lose to the Panthers, the Bills are in. If they beat the Patriots, Bengals lose to the Chiefs, and the Steelers lose to Seattle, they are in. That's actually very doable, by the way. Scenario number 3 is you just swap out the Bengals and the Jags instead. So 1, 2, and 3 are all very similar scenarios from that perspective. And I think that number 2 one is very possible this week. Scenario number 4, Bills win, Bengals lose, Colts and Texans come up short. Maybe, but probably not. Scenario number 5, Bills win, Colts lose, Steelers lose, Texans lose. I look back at that. Bills win, Bengals lose, Steelers lose, which that is the favored outcome in all three of those games. That's how the line is going to be. I think the Bills clinch this week. I think the Bills are also going to answer this question. What playoff team do you not want to play? Who do you want to avoid because they're playing great ball and you don't want to run on that buzzsaw as we get into January? Sound off in the comments section. Folks, that then leaves 6 teams still alive in the playoff hunt. Let's break down their playoff chances. Indianapolis, the 7 seed, they are the favorite. Now, the reason being at 59%, their schedule, right? They wrap up with the Raiders this week and then the Texans in Week 18, which could very well be the primetime game. Winner gets in to the postseason. Houston, by the way, will play Tennessee this week. So that's a game that they should win. You could very well have both teams at 9-7 fighting for a division crown or at least a wild card spot. Pittsburgh, meanwhile, why they're at 13% to having the tiebreaker over Cincinnati, Seattle and Baltimore, both of them on the road. Why do I feel like it's going to be a lose to the Seahawks, beat the Ravens, and secure another 9-win season for Mike Tomlin, with Ravens playing for nothing? Why do I think that's going to be the case? Bengals, meanwhile, Chiefs this week. That's a very challenging football game. Then the Browns, who might not be playing for anything. As weird as it sounds for these teams, because Indy and Houston and Denver are all lost, Bengals, Steelers, Raiders, despite their outcomes for the Bengals losing, they're right there in the midst of it. They're right there in the thick of a bunch of 8-7 teams there. The Raiders, meanwhile, they got to win out. Colts and Broncos. So that, again, this week 17 matchup, Indy, Las Vegas, highly, highly impactful. Denver also does need help. Now, because they have the Raiders still, they've got a chance to pull off a miracle here. They've got the Raiders in Week 18. The Chargers this week. Win out, they have a chance, but they need a lot of help from the teams in front of them.